Review here is the proper time to use raw numbers and the proper time to use percentages. One of the most common mistakes I see when people are reporting data subsets, and that is uh, data that is nested underneath other data, is that people misrepresent the data is the best way to put it by reporting the wrong numbers. And so I've seen it quite a bit. And I want to try to help you get around that. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples and I'm going to show you how it plays out and why it's important. So a couple of years ago, I was asked to do a survey for the state of Texas. Actually, it was a grant that I applied for and was able to get it with some other researchers to do the study on the state of Texas and lottery players. Particularly, or in particular, the state does a research project every couple of years where they try to determine who's playing the lottery. Uh, the overall goal is to show that the lottery is not being played disproportionately by people of poverty, and the state's concerned about that. And so they asked people to. They had a grant call out. We were able to get it here at Texas Tech, and a couple of us did the study. This is not the actual data, but this represents kind of what we found, and I want to show you why it could be troublesome. So what we did was we asked people several questions, but we're going to pretend we just asked them two questions here. Question number one is, are you above or below the poverty level? We asked that question by finding out how much money they made, how big their family was, and then we knew what the poverty level in the state was. If you were below the poverty level, we coded you as that, and if you were above it, we coded you as that. So we knew what participants were above and below the poverty level, and then we asked those same participants whether they played the lottery or not. So what we knew is what your income was, and then if you played the lottery. So what we did find was that the majority of people in the state of Texas that were in our survey were above the poverty level, and that makes sense. The average person in the state's not at poverty. So let's say for this data that we found out that 70% of the people in this study were above the poverty level and 30% were below the poverty level. So we know that. We also found out that of the entire people we interviewed, again, we'll just pretend that it's 1,000 for this example, that 300 people above the poverty level played the lottery, and 200 people below the poverty level played the lottery. So 300 above played the lottery, 200 below played the lottery. So if you're just looking at this data right here, and you were asked who in the state of Texas is playing the lottery, you'd be inclined to say, well, more people above the poverty level play the lottery than below the poverty level, and you'd be correct in saying that. In fact, in the state of Texas, more people above the poverty level play the lottery than below the poverty level. But that doesn't really get at the heart of the data, because remember, there's more people in the state of Texas that are above the poverty level, so we'd expect more of them to play the lottery. There's more of them there. So what I wanted to find out, particularly for this study, was if you are above the poverty level, what are the odds that you play the lottery? And if you're below the poverty level, what are the odds that you play the lottery? Again, if you look at just the raw numbers, 300 versus 200, any of us know that 300 is bigger than 200, so therefore lottery players are above the poverty level, is what this data here would suggest. So what I've done below is make a simple graph, and these people here with the dollar sign are going to be the people who are above the poverty level. These people here with a cent sign are going to be the people represent the people that were below the poverty level, So if you look at this, you can see that there are what I did is I colored the ones that would have said yes, they play the lottery as red. And so if you look at this, you'll see that there are more red dollar signs than there are red cent signs. So in fact, there are more people that are playing the lottery that are above the poverty level than there are below the poverty level. In fact, there's 300 red dollar signs here, and there's only 200 red cent signs. But again, that doesn't really explain what we found fully, because if you think about this number of red people versus the black ones here who didn't play the lottery, you can see that the majority of people above the poverty level don't play the lottery. There's a minority that are red, the ones that play the lottery. So yes, this block of red is bigger than this block of red. But the real data here is that if you're above the poverty level, you're likely not playing the lottery. It's a minority that are playing the lottery. However, if you're below the poverty level, you can see that the odds are you are playing the lottery. Disproportionately, more people below the poverty level play the lottery than above. And so what we found was that among those above poverty, only 21% were playing the lottery. Among those below the poverty level, 66% play the lottery. So looking at the raw data, you would say, yes, more people above the poverty level play the lottery. But the real, I guess, granular part of this is when you start considering it among the groups, in fact, people below the poverty level are the highest percentage lottery players in the state of Texas. So this data is in contrast with this, it would seem. So this is why you always want to look at percentages within the grouping. And so I'm going to give you another example here, and then we're going to move on. I'll move us down to here and try to expand this out where you can see it a little bit better. What I have here is some data from a study that where we looked at type of media outlet. So we looked at newspapers, magazines, television, and internet. And we tried to determine which type of ads were most common in those media. So this would be a simple question of, are medicine, auto, food, or clothing ads, which ones are more common in the different types of media? With the assumption being something like, and again, this is just an off-the-wall hypothesis, that in magazines there are more auto ads than there are auto ads in the newspaper, let's say. So that's what we were looking at here. These numbers here, and you guys all remember how to do a crosstab. It's SPSS function, and we did that a couple of weeks ago, so I'm not worried about going through that again. But here's the raw number right here. So newspapers ads that were about clothing, there was 14 of them. Newspaper ads about automobiles were 16 of them, and therefore, and so on. So you can see here that magazine ads about medicine were 4. Television ads about automobiles, there were 12 of those. So if I was to ask you, where are you most likely to see a food ad, you might be inclined to come up here and say, oh, there's the most food ads, 23, 22, 2, and 13, occurred in the newspaper. So yeah, therefore, I'm most likely to see a newspaper ad for food, because food ads were more commonly in the newspaper than anywhere else. That's if you look at the raw data. But again, remember our example from the lottery. There's more at play there. For one thing, if you look down here, you can see that there were way more newspapers considered than there were magazines, televisions, or internet pages. So right off the bat, there's a bigger chance that an ad would appear in a newspaper just on the surface because there was more newspapers that were looked at. So what I have here is this broken down in a way that's a little bit more easy to see. So you see here newspaper, these are the raw numbers. So newspaper ads about clothing, there was 14. Newspaper ads about food, there were 23. Newspaper ads about automobiles, 16, and so on. So you can see this here. So if I was to ask you, okay, newspapers or magazines, which one are you more likely to see a food ad in? Well, if you looked at the raw numbers, you'd say, well, newspapers had 23, magazines had a 22, therefore I'm more likely to see a food ad in a newspaper than I am in a magazine, because there's more, that number is bigger than this number. That, from the raw perspective, looks right. But what you have to be careful of is that, look, we looked at more newspapers than we looked at magazines. Therefore, there was a better chance we were going to see ads about food in newspapers. We looked at more of them. So what you really need to do is do this by percentage. Of the total percentage of the total number of ads in a newspaper, what percentage were about food? The total number of ads in a magazine, what percentage were about food? And if you look at it by percentage, you'll see here, this is the same numbers, this is just showing the percentage of overall, that in fact, only 29.9% of all ads in a newspaper were about food. However, 46.8% of all ads in a magazine are about food. Therefore, the answer to this question really would be is you're more likely to see an ad about food in a magazine because of this percentage than you are to see an ad about food in a newspaper. This is the reason I tell you that you have to be very careful when you're looking at subsets of population, that you want to make sure that you do it by percentage of the overall within that group, as opposed to the raw number of just total number of ads. Yeah, in fact, we looked at, you see here, 200 total ads. Of those, there were more newspaper ads about food than there were magazine ads. That does not tell the whole story though, because there was more newspaper ads investigated than there were magazine ads investigated. And so always look at the subset population percentage within those cells to get a good sense of what cell is reflecting the most of any one given content, whether this is about, if you remember our previous example about drivers, putting on makeup, males versus females, whatever that may be, always look at the percentage and not the raw numbers, because the percentage gives you a sense of the numbers within the group. The raw number just gives you the percent, the overall feeling of numbers on the whole. And we're not really looking at numbers on the whole. We want to know within each group which one is more likely. So always look at your percentages within group, and you can do that through crosstabs as shown. Again, I'll go back and find the crosstab page here. And that number that I've been reporting to you is this number right here. Is right here, this within the media content. So this is the media. Within newspaper media, 18.2% were clothing, 29.9% were food, 20.8% were automobiles, and 31.2% were medicine. So make sure that you look at these numbers here when you're trying to compare groups. Don't compare them on these raw numbers. Compare them on these numbers right here, and you will see, like for example here, and I'll let this subject go. But if you were to look at medicine ads, where are you more likely to see them? If you look at the raw numbers, it would seem to say newspaper, there's 24. Well, if you look at the percentages, 31.2% of newspaper ads are about medicine, 32.4% of television ads are about medicine. So even though it's 24 versus 11, and you're inclined to say, oh yeah, look, the 24 is bigger than 11, therefore there's more newspaper ads about medicine. Be careful with that, because there was half as many, see, we only looked at half as many television ads as newspaper ads, and so therefore 11 is actually a higher percentage of 34 than 24 is of a percentage of 77. So look at this number, 32.4% of television ads were about medicine, while 31.2% of newspaper ads were. Therefore, my conclusion would be you're more likely to encounter a medicine ad on TV than you are in the newspaper.